mistake I used to make in my previous relationships is I wasn't super transparent and upfront about my needs and wants. And I would get into these situations later on in the relationship where the girl was like, well, I didn't know you want to have sex with other girls that much. So with her, I didn't make that mistake, and I was very transparent upfront from the start. So she knew that, I wasn't going to be in an exclusive relationship on my end.
Welcome to the Emily and Todd Podcast. Today we are talking about hookup culture and atypical relationships with special guest Alex Playing with Fire. Alex has over 100,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel where he gives advice to guys that tends to be a mix of pickup and red pill. Alex, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Alex.
Thanks for having me for the second time.
Yeah, this is the second
time. We can make it work.
What we wanted to let you know too, Alex, is that we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff right now that might be personal. But if there's anything that we end up talking about that you end up not comfortable with, we can edit it out.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm an open book, so I don't think we'll cross any lines. But yeah, I'll let you know if there's something that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's just dive right into it.
Okay.
Cool.
We want to first talk about when you say you're in a one-way open relationship with your girlfriend, is that on your end or on her end is open?
On my end, yeah. So I can hook up with other girls. She cannot hook up with other guys. But there's still some rules. I can't, for example, go and hook up with my exes, right? Like that would be like a hard violation of, the trust we have. Or she would probably start getting a little iffy if I start seeing the same girl over and over again, right? Because emotionally, I'm exclusive to her, but physically, I'm not.
Okay.
So that's the boundary right there, is that emotionally you're to connect with her, but not to other girls, but physically.
Yeah, if I started doing datey stuff, doing date night with other girls, like I think that would be a hard no for her. Like that would be like a big issue. In fact, I know that because she's expressed that in the past. So yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how this evolved and how that conversation went when I assume you're the one who brought it up to her?
Actually, it was either her or kind of mutual. So we started off as fuck buddies for a solid year and a half. We were just having casual sex with each other. And then we kind of started, as we kept getting to know each other more and more, we started to like each other more and more. At some point we were like, we're fuck buddies, but all we do is hang out with each other, right? So, we're kind of in a relationship anyway. So then we had a discussion. We established that we're going to be in a relationship. But for the first month, it was just kind of like, because she knows me really well. The mistake I used to make in my previous relationships is I wasn't super transparent and upfront about my needs and wants. And I would get into these situations later on in the relationship where the girl was like, well, I didn't know you want to have sex with other girls that much. So with her, I didn't make that mistake, and I was very transparent upfront from the start. So she knew that, I wasn't going to be in an exclusive relationship on my end. But yeah, I think about we kind of came to this realization together. We had a discussion about it. It really wasn't like no one was trying to convince anyone. It was just like, she was like, hey, listen, I'm very happy just having sex with you. I know that you like to have sex with other girls. It's not a problem for me. But, what would be problematic for me is if you start dating other girls. And we kind of, realized what our limits were, what our boundaries were. And yeah, it's been actually very smooth sailing ever since then.
So you spoke a second about a couple ground rules. Are there specific days where you have the, option of like Wednesday and Fridays, like I'm going to hook up, or Wednesday and Fridays, I'm going to go cold approach, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's nothing like that. It's just, Friday is our date night. So it more has to do with working. So, I just don't work on Fridays, so we can have the whole evening together. Because in the past, I would always be working and she'd have to wait for me for hours. So we just agreed Friday was going to be our date night where I would take a night off work. So yeah, if I flaked on her on Friday night to hang out with some other random girl, I'm sure that would be a huge issue. Not that I would ever do that. But no, there's not specific days. Again, we just follow the transparency model. So she wants me to tell her every single thing. So if I'm planning on meeting up with a girl, or that she just wants me to give her heads up. That's basically how we operate.
Okay. So I'm wondering, has there ever been a time where, like you said, she wants every detail? Does she ask for photos of the women? Does she ask for details of the sexual, encounter?
She might sometimes if she's curious. Like, I mean, I'll
Uh-huh.
send her, like, she'll be like, "Ooh, let me see what this girl looks like," and she'll be like, "Hot," or she's like, "You can do better, Alex." She'd be like, "Ooh, I really like her. Like, you should hang out with her again," or I don't know. Yeah, so she'll kind of give her input, but not in like a serious way. It's more in like a having fun type of way.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, you guys must have talked a lot about like boundaries and expectations and the relationship, because I'm thinking like just a normal closed relationship where there's just two people involved, like even that is hard to establish those normal boundaries that kind of go along with our culture. So, what was that like from the get go? Or were you already having those conversations like when you guys were just fuck buddies?
No, we were not. Not when we were fuck buddies, because we were both at that point. I had just gotten out of a relationship, and I'm pretty sure not. She didn't just get out of a relationship, but like I think like 6 to 12 months before she was in a relationship. So we were both like really trying to keep it casual. So no, we never. Neither one of us imagined we would ever be dating. In all honesty, yeah, it was a realization for both of us. But yeah, we just started to like each other. I wouldn't say like, yeah, we probably had more discussions than the average couple, but I wouldn't say it's like something that's like super time consuming. I mean, it's actually really straightforward. It's like, I can have sex with whoever I want, but be emotionally exclusive to her and no ex-girlfriends, right? That was like the only one we kind of crossed that bridge later because one of my exes texted me and, I talked to my girlfriend like, hey, she texted me, I'm not planning on hanging out with her, but how do you feel about me? Like just, texting her back. She's like, oh, I'm cool with it. And then a few weeks later, she's like, yeah, I'll be honest. I was trying to be the cool girlfriend, but it's kind of bothering me. I was like, okay, no problem. I'll stop the communication. So that was like the only one we kind of discovered later on, but most of the stuff we just established pretty early on.
Mm-hmm. So have you ever had experience where you were with somebody and the sex was just mind blowing and it was better than your relationship?
No, honestly, I think for me, sex with my girlfriend is tops anything. There's the novelty factor, which definitely can impede your judgment because it's like new, it's something new, it's a new girl.
Mm-hmm.
But if we just look at it like, if I compare it to when me and my girlfriend first started having sex and the novelty factor was there, yeah, it's just with some ex-girlfriends in the past, I would say it was at that level. But yeah, we just have a lot of chemistry, so I think it would be like pretty hard for me to top that.
Okay.
So, what is the major drive then in having casual sex with others and keeping your end open versus, just having good sex with her?
Well, one is the freedom. I like having that freedom. I've always been really hated to be constrained in any type of thing. Even when I used to work in corporate jobs, I used to hate the fact that I was constrained. That's why I feel like I'm one of those people that was designed to be an entrepreneur because I need that freedom. So I've always, just really liked having the option of freedom, even if I don't use it quite often. But second thing is I do enjoy the variety. Like I do like the idea that if I see a hot girl while I'm walking down the street, I don't have to like say, no, Alex, you can't do this. I don't have to pick and choose. I can actually go up and talk to her and maybe potentially pull her back to my place and hook up with her. Right. So I would say it's those two things. Yeah.
I'm wondering, so the extra girl, that's walking down the street that you end up hooking up with, does she know that you're in a relationship, or is she just like fully aware that this is casual anyways?
Yeah, well, anything I do is going to be casual with any girl besides my girlfriend. So I would never like, romantically embark on a new girl. That's just not something I would do. I wouldn't even like let myself get into that mindset because that would be like, cheating according to our relationship. I mean, I don't lie, but I also don't go out my way to tell that. So if the girl asks me, I explain to them, my situation, but I'm not going to be like, hey, I'm Alex. By the way, I'm in a one-way open relationship. Nice to meet you. Right. So I kind of take a middle ground on that. If the girl asks, I tell her, but I don't go out of my way to, explain to her my situation. But I feel like I don't have to because, again, it's purely casual. I'm always, with any girl besides my girlfriend, we're just approaching it from like a very casual angle.
Mm-hmm. So when you meet someone, whether, it's cold, warm, or online, and are you very upfront with her about I'm just looking for something casual? Are you interested? That type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I use more tact than that. I mean, I'm not going to be like, hey, I just want to fuck you and that's it. Okay. But you can communicate that in a more subtle way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like I have a very sexual, like if we take online, I have a very sexual profile. There's shirtless photos. There's like talks about BDSM. When I'm texting the girl, it's quite sexual. So it's, like any girl who's texting me knows like what the deal is.
Have you ever experienced it where, you start that off that way, you start it casual, but then does she turn around potentially and ask for more and ask to see you again, or ask for her, to date you?
No, that's never happened. If we like hook up, we maybe hook up several times, but the second or third time, she will know that I have a girlfriend and that I'm not available. So
Okay.
I'll cut it off before it even like starts getting in that direction. Yeah, I won't let it like even come close to that.
That's what I wondered. I mean, so many girls out there get jealous of like their boyfriend even just liking Instagram photos, right?
Right.
Like, I'm wondering like where the line is drawn with your girlfriend knowing information about these other girls that you're hooking up with, and if that gets to her ever.
Yeah, I think my girlfriend, one of the things I like about her, she has a really healthy self-esteem, almost like too healthy, where she like almost thinks, so in her mind, she knows that she's the best, and that, that I like, why would I pick another girl over her since she's the best, right? If you think you're the best, then you're not really worried. So I think that's kind of how she views it. She's like, yeah, I trust Alex, he's very invested in our relationship. I'm very invested. He would never like, go behind my back, right? But there's definitely a huge trust element. Like, yeah, you have to kind of build that trust. And both, I'm not really that much of a trusting person, and she's not either. So it was definitely a work in progress to like build that trust to the point where we can both trust each other.
Okay. So one of the things that, there's been a lot of research on is pair bonding, and that the more that people have sexual partners, the harder it is for them to pair bond. And so I'm wondering, for you and, again, maybe a lot of your subscribers, have you thought about, is that something that, potentially may affect your ability to pair bond by, having, because I thought I heard you on a podcast say that you've been with like 300 to 400 women. Is that correct?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Are you talking about the study that came from the Institute of Family Studies? 'Cause, that's the one study that people often cite when they talk about the pair bonding. It's a very interesting study. The thing is that if you really go deep and actually read what the author of the study actually said, instead of just like, taking the chart or watching someone's reaction, he talks about how there's absolutely no proof that it's a causation thing. And it could be a causation thing, or it also could be a correlation. So meaning like people who have sex with 100 girls, it's not the fact that they had sex with 100 girls that it makes them less likely to pair bond. It's the other way, because they're like, for whatever reason, maybe their upbringing or their personality, they're not likely to pair bond, and that's why they have sex with 100 girls, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm not convinced that it's a causation thing, meaning that there's something in the act of having sex with multiple people that makes you less likely to pair bond. I believe it's a correlation thing. I mean, if someone can prove to me that it's a causation, I'm willing to change my mind. But no, I don't think I have any kind of issue with pair bonding. Not more than the average person. I feel very bonded to my girlfriend. So I would need to like see more evidence that there's some causation factor going on there. Because as far as I understand, the way it looks like to me, it's like there's a lot of correlation, but not that much causation.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm just wondering, though, just from a common sense point of view, if you're a guy and, you've had all this variety, and then all of a sudden, boom, you have to just spend the rest of your life with one woman. I would just think, again, just viscerally, that would be a really hard pill to swallow.
I think there's another way of looking at it, though. If you're a guy who's been with a lot of women, you're picking from a place of abundance. So you're not picking the first girl that's willing to fuck you. You're picking the girl out of all the hundreds of girls who fucked you, who you really, really like the most. So you've experienced the rest, and you pick the best option, versus the guy who's been with like 2 or 3 girls. He's picking the first option, and then he could always be wondering, well, what about this option? Never experienced. Oh, I've never been with an Asian girl. I've never been with a Latina girl, right? Like, oh my God, maybe there's the grass is green on the other side. Like, if you're someone who's been with hundreds of girls, you already know what the grass is like. So you're not really thinking about the grass being greener. So I think that's like another way you can look at it, right? And to kind of counterbalance that. Like, is it an advantage or is it a disadvantage, right? Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What I think of with that, though, is like people are so multidimensional that, like, is there really going to be a clear choice of this is my favorite, I'm choosing you? And even if that is the case and you choose them, then you're seeing different sides of them, as you're dating them, and that you might not like. And then your mind is going to go automatically, I think, to the fact that you had these other options out there or other experiences out there that you liked more. in that aspect. And so then you're like, well, how do I balance this out? I mean, I think that's what a lot of open relationships do, is like you feel like you're lacking somewhere. And so then you go seek that in another person instead of either one, just being okay with what you have, and not to say that that's settling, but, you know, just like lowering expectations a bit, because everyone has good sides and bad sides to them. Or, you know, you're just going to another person, you know, and seeking that. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you should very, very thoroughly know the girl before even considering a relationship. Like, I think to me, it blows my mind how people jump into relationships after a month of knowing someone. I would need to know and hook up with a girl for at least a year to even consider a relationship, right? So I think that you just didn't do your due diligence if there's things you're discovering about that person. Like, for me personally, I knew my girlfriend really well. There's nothing new I've discovered about her since we got into a relationship. And I think that's the right approach, is just being careful and kind of doing your due diligence, because you can put on like a facade for a short period of time, but you can't put on a facade forever, right? So I think guys and girls would just be so much better off if they didn't rush into things and just, you know, were a little bit more cautious and did their due diligence before like coming to a conclusion to be in a relationship.
I guess where it would get tricky for me, and this is what I'd actually like to ask Emily, is, you know, how would you feel though about like having sex with somebody that, you know, didn't say they were in, or, you know, going to give you a relationship?
Oh yeah. So just have like casual sex.
No, just say like, you know, I want to determine if this is a good fit or not for me. But in order to do that, I need 6 months, a year, and, you know, sex is part of a relationship, and I would argue it's an important part of it. I don't think anybody would probably deny that.
I don't think anyone would deny that. Like, I totally agree that that's an important aspect.
But if a guy came up to you and said, I really want to get to know you, but I'm not ready to commit to you, but in order to make that commitment, I need to know all aspects of you, and that includes sexuality. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'd say that's a no-go.
Okay.
To be honest, I would say,
okay,
I'll see you later. Like,
okay.
No. Because...
But I would argue that sex should not be part of the determination process at all.
Oh, okay.
In terms of like you should not get into a relationship with a girl, or a girl should not get in a relationship with a guy, although that's usually the other way, because you want to have sex with them.
Big thing I would think about worrying about from a woman's point of view, if the guy was the one who was in the open relationship, is, you know, potentially either, you know, getting that other woman pregnant, or, you know, bringing STDs back to the relationship. You know, because a lot of them are, you know, it's a lot of people aren't honest about them. And, you know, there's, even if you use condoms, sometimes you could still contract, you know, different STDs.
I mean, if you are practicing safe sex, the odds are like really small. Like, it's like, unless you're having sex every single day with a prostitute, like if you're just, you know, once a year having sex with a new girl and you're using protection, theoretically possible. I would say the odds are like really small. But I would further clarify my position. I think this is something that you guys might disagree with, or at least your audience won't like. I have a little bit of a double standard, meaning that I think one-way open relationships can work if it's on the guy's side, but I don't think it works if it's the other way. And that's something I've debated people on my channel about. But I just think, fundamentally speaking, if you're in a one-way open relationship where the girl can have sex with other guys and you can't have sex with girls, that relationship is destined for failure. I would give that relationship a very short time span. I think that two-way open relationships are a bit better, but still sort of destined for failure. I think that either a closed relationship or a one-way open relationship on the guy's side is the only way you can have a sustainable relationship long-term.
Okay. Why is that?
I think there are several factors at play. I think men and women are just wired differently. And I think I will put it like this. It's really hard for the vast majority of women to have sex with someone without forming some kind of attachment to them. Now, of course, there are men who can't do that either. One-way open relationships on the man's side aren't for every type of guy. There are some men who are also incapable of having just regular sex without forming attachments. But more often than not, a man can't do that, versus very few women can actually do it on their end. So I think that's the first factor, is just how we're wired, and whether the woman is going to form an attachment with that person that she sleeps with. And if she does form an attachment, it's just like, I think the second thing, and this is probably the more controversial one of these positions, I think attraction is definitely tied into respect. So I think that the minute your girlfriend or wife stops respecting you, that attraction is like not going to be salvaged. So I think that, and I think that it's just, you could say it's biological, or you could say it's just because of the way society is. Because, you know, as soon as your friends find out that your girlfriend is whatever having sex with other guys, they'll call you a cuck. For whatever reason, either social or biological, a woman is going to lose respect for you if you're cool with her getting banged by other dudes. And that is going to play into attraction. She may not want to lose respect for you. She may be like, no, my boyfriend is awesome. He is, you know, the best. But you can't force yourself to respect someone or not respect someone. So I think, yeah, those are the primary two reasons.
Interesting.
I think the third factor, I would say, the last one, is it's also fundamentally way, way easier for a girl to get sex than for a guy. So as a guy, unless like you're really famous, you know, you're not going to be having like, you're not going to be having sex with like J-Lo or whatever, or like whoever like the hottest like stars, right? But for a girl, it's really easy for her to fuck guys who are like higher status than you, better looks than you, better, you know, pretty much everything than you. Versus for you, it's like it's much tougher. So I think that's probably the least important factor, but I think that also plays a role.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, that last factor, I mean, maybe it's less likely that you're going to end up hooking up with a girl that is more attractive than your girlfriend. But what if that happens? Are you going to, you know, potentially change your mind and, you know, start hooking up with that girl more often than your girlfriend?
Well, if we're talking about in terms of probabilities, like my girlfriend is attractive. So the chance, I mean, of course, she's not the hottest girl on the planet, but I find her very attractive. That's why I'm dating her.
Yeah.
You know, the likelihood of me hooking up with a girl that is more attractive than her is, you know, it can happen, but it's not super high, right? She's already like probably in like the top percentile, whatever. Versus for her, you know, she could hook up with a celebrity or something like that. Like, you know, like she's a pretty girl living in Miami. Like, you know, like any hot girl living in a major city has multiple celebs, DJs in their DMs. So for her, it would be like a piece of cake to hook up with a guy who's either has higher status than me or is more physically attractive than me. So yeah, I think again, like this, it's a little different if you're like a guy who's famous, where you do have that kind of option, but we're just talking about for like the regular guy. And just in terms of probabilities and statistics, it's a lot more likely that she will hook up with a better option than you, but it's less likely that will happen to you if you get into a relationship with a girl who you find really attractive, which I think should be a prerequisite.
So for you, is it just strictly variety then? Because essentially what you're saying is that probably most of the girls that you hook up with are going to be lower SMV than your girlfriend.
Well, I wouldn't make that claim. You know, I'm not like hooking up with like unattractive girls, but like I'll put it like this: I find my girlfriend very attractive. There might be girls who have bigger tits or bigger ass than her, or I don't know, like nicer hair, even though she has a nice head of hair. But it's like there's not going to be a drastic difference, especially because for men, clout, you know, status is not really a factor. Versus, you know, for women, status is an important factor, and she can absolutely, you know, have like some kind of crazy rich DJ or whatever who literally does all the work for her and flies her out to have sex with her. So I think just like the discrepancy in terms of attractiveness and value is just, and probabilities is just like very much loaded in the woman's favor due to the, you know, dating marketplace.
That's interesting. Do you think that's tied into you thinking that if she's going to go off and hook up with, you know, some guy that's really successful and attractive, that's going to turn into a relationship, which then would pull her away from you?
Yeah, she may not want it to turn into a relationship. She may go into it with the best of intentions. Hey, this is just going to be a one-night stand. I love my boyfriend, would never leave him. She may go into it with the best intentions, but if she's like most women, she's going to form some kind of connection with that person. And if that person has like significantly higher quote unquote value than me, you know, that's definitely going to like stack the odds. And she may, for a period of time, still try to stay in a relationship with me, but you know, that's going to be in the back of her mind. That's casting down our relationship. Maybe that person is offering to fly her out again, right? And now she's like in a weird position. So yeah, I just think that's kind of like playing with fire, pun intended.
Yeah. So I get that, because that would be your concern, right? As she goes off and does that, your concern.
Well, no, my main thing is that the idea of my girlfriend having sex with any man is like repulsive to me. It's like watching a dog get murdered. So the biggest thing is that it's just something that makes me insanely uncomfortable, even the idea of it.
So what do you think your girlfriend would say? Because I think a lot of women would also say the same thing. Like I would say I would be like physically repulsed at the idea of my boyfriend having sex with another girl.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's definitely quite a few girls who are like that. She's not in that category. She does not. And I truly believe her because she's like, even though she seems like small and cute, she has like zero problem like speaking up for herself. So she's not the kind of girl that would sugarcoat things. Like she'll straight up tell me, I don't like this or I like this. So yeah, I truly believe her when she says that. She doesn't have that. We've had these discussions where we joke around like, does that technically make her a cuck? Right? It's like, is she the female version of a cuck?
Yeah, I was just about to ask that actually.
Yeah, but she really has no aversion. In fact, I think a small part of her enjoys the idea of me having sex with another girl. So yeah, she's just like kind of built differently than I think. But I think other girls are in that category. But I also think there's a lot of girls like you, Emily, who would have that physical repulsion as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's like swingers out there, right, that are obviously not physically repulsed because they're watching it.
Right.
But has your girlfriend been in other open relationships then before you?
As far as I know, no, she has not.
Okay.
Okay. Is this your first one too? Or have you had experience?
No, it's not my first one. Okay.
Okay.
Let me, I want to, I'll be trying to think of a way to phrase this without like putting our business too much out there. Okay. So I'm going to speak as a hypothetical. Hypothetically speaking, I think you can get a really good idea of how someone truly feels about that if you have a threesome, meaning like if you have a threesome with another girl and your girlfriend's like, you know, like kind of like not really that into it, then she might be deluding herself, saying she's cool with it. But if you're having a threesome and the girl's all about it and is like loves watching you have sex with another girl and it's like super into it, then it's probably that she's more of the latter. So again, not making any kind of claim, just saying hypothetically speaking, that's my observation.
So I totally get that. So in that case, would that be the boundary though, would be that she would want to watch in all cases? You know, like a girl that is into that, she would want to be there and be present.
Well, it could be. I mean, again, like I don't think everyone, I'm certainly not saying that everyone should do the kind of relationship I have. In fact, I think it's not for a lot of people. But, you know, like I'm my own individual person, my own individual preferences. But yeah, I think that could be something that you negotiate that, you know, if that's something the girl into, but that would probably be if she's like really into watching, which I definitely would not say that about my girlfriend at all. Like she's like, that's like a super big fetish. Like she's definitely not a voyeur. But yeah, if you are dating a voyeur, then that might be a condition you will have is that yeah, like she has to be there and watch. I mean, it seems reasonable. I think it just comes down to like, when you're getting into a relationship is like, what are your needs? What are your wants? What are your boundaries? What are the person's boundaries? Having honest, transparent discussion about that and agreeing on something where you're both in a position to be happy and not have to like lie to each other. And so I think that's like the most crucial step. And also not being afraid to potentially mess out a potential relationship by expressing yourself like what you actually want. That's a mistake I used to make when I was a little bit younger is I was like, you know, maybe I would hook up with a girl for a year and then we start thinking about dating. I'm like, this girl's so great, you know, maybe I just shouldn't say that one thing that's kind of important for me because I don't want to like, you know, like turn her off, right? But that comes back biting you in the ass later on. So I think you should have a full willingness to, you know, not have things work out by expressing everything that you want. And I think that's why compatibility is so important. And that's why it blows my mind when I see people like, you know, getting into a relationship with like the first person that's willing to fuck them. So yeah.
Why do you think, because it seems like, you know, from your situation, it seems like completely fine. I know this kind of goes back to what you were speaking about before, as far as the difference between men and women, but it seems like, you know, kind of in the manosphere or just in general society, you know, if a guy is into that, like he's a cuck, he's a legitimate cuck, like there's a lot of judgment and shame around that. And so why do you think that is? And have you ever actually met anybody that falls into that category? And
I mean, I debate people. I mean, Mr. Slade is a prime example of that. He loves the idea of his mistress, who he's never even had sex with, getting banged by other guys. He wants to be there and watch. Like that's legitimately what turns him on, right?
Okay.
He's with someone. So yeah, I've met other people like him who are just wired totally differently than like me or the average person. What was the question? The full question?
I was just wondering, you know, why men are shamed for that. do you think?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't have a clear. I can just give you my theories. I think that's like, that's a pretty tricky question. How
Sure.
much of that is biological? How much of that is like social programming? I would venture to say it's probably a combination of both. I think, for whatever reason, society developed with the idea that men can be, polygamous, women not so much until the very recent times. So, for example, like if you had, back in the medieval era, you had the king, and the king had like multiple wives or multiple concubines. That's something that's like historically been always a thing with the top tier guys. But you didn't really see that many examples of like a queen having like it happened, but it wasn't as often. It wasn't as accepted. So I think that's definitely there's some kind of aspect to it. I think that a lot of it probably has to do with how easy it is. The difference between easiness of getting sex between men and women. So for a woman to get a lot of sex requires no skill really at all. It doesn't even require her to be that attractive. We've done experiments. We took created a Tinder profile of a really, really overweight girl. She had 500 matches. Like most of those guys were down to come over that night and have sex with her, right?
Wow.
Very little skill required. Versus as a guy to get a lot of sex, like unless you're like Leonardo DiCaprio, that requires a good amount of skill. And even for Leonardo DiCaprio, he had to work his way up to become that person, right? So I think because of that, it's much more admirable when a man can have a lot of sex because it's like, okay, wow, like that guy really had to earn it. Versus for a woman, she didn't have to. It's kind of like the difference if like you're a multimillionaire because you started a successful business and you start from the bottom, or you're just a trust fund baby. You guys are both millionaires, but people are going to respect the person that had to work for it rather than the person who it was given to. So that would be kind of my theory.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think there's a lot of shame too for women that give up casual sex very easily, right? And usually that's other women that are shaming her. And I think that all has to do with the impact on our culture, because if a woman that is, let's say, like of lower tier or lower quality is willing to be promiscuous and just give a man what he wants, then she kind of butts in front of a girl potentially that is of higher quality, but doesn't want to just give it up very quickly, because she's seeking other things emotionally first.
Let me touch on that because I have so many. So first of all, I just fundamentally cannot stand the idea of women being shamed for having sex because it's something that's natural and normal. So anyone who I just roll my eyes whenever I see anyone trying to shame other people, even if it's a woman for having sex. Second of all, it's interesting the kind of language you use, right? You said give, meaning like the man is taking sex from the woman. And that's the view a lot of people have when it comes to sex. I think that's a wrong way to look at it. I think sex is a win-win where both people benefit. You're not giving something to the guy. The guy's not giving something to you. You guys are both having an experience together, right? That's ideally mutually beneficial, right? If you guys, both are looking for the same thing. So I just fundamentally reject this idea of like women giving men sex. It's like, no, it's a win-win. That's the way it should be. I know a lot of people see it that way, but I think that's a completely wrong way to look at it.
Yeah, I agree with your thought process. And I've talked about that before, it being mutually beneficial, like especially in marriages where women are trying to be like the gatekeeper, or if they try to use it and weaponize it. Mm-hmm. But the truth is that I think most people would agree that women are the gatekeeper. And
they definitely are.
And to this point, I mean, you just were talking about a few minutes ago about how it's harder for men to find sex, right? But it's easier for women to find sex. So doesn't that mean that, if it's easy for her, difficult for him, that she is essentially the gatekeeper?
Oh, women are definitely the gatekeepers of sex. There's no denying that. That's an obvious reality. But just because she's the gatekeeper doesn't mean she's like giving implies there's a sacrifice on her part. She's like sacrificing something to, and the guy's benefiting, right? And she is the gatekeeper because there's hundreds of guys every single day that want to fuck her, right? It would be impossible and like insanely like weird for her to fuck every single guy that wants to fuck her. So of course she has to be the gatekeeper, right? But when she does find a guy that she likes, whether it's looks, whether it's personality, whatever, it's not her giving him sex. It's like they're both engaging in activity that like benefits them both. But yes, of course, I don't think those ideas are mutually exclusive.
There's, many female prostitutes, but there's no male prostitutes unless they're having sex with another guy.
There are actually some. I've interviewed some of them on my channel, but they're very rare. You're right.
Yeah, but it's
They're
one of
very
those
rare.
things where. So, how do you feel about that? Because that's kind of a mutually agreed upon situation. It's just that there ends up being money exchanged.
I mean, I have no problem with prostitution. I think it should be legalized and regulated. I've debated people who think it should be legal, and I think their arguments are really weak. I think the society would be a lot better off if prostitution was legalized and regulated. But it's not something that I personally, engage in or want to engage in or encourage my viewers to engage in. I think as a man, it can, especially if you do it regularly, it can take a really big toll on your psyche. It can reinforce a lot of negative beliefs. So I think it should be just like, for example, I don't know, let's take like porn, right? I think porn should be obviously legal. I think there's nothing wrong with people engaging in porn, but I think it can be really detrimental if you engage with it too much. So I hold the belief that it should be legal, but it's not something that I want to do. Just like fast food. Fast food should be legal and regulated, right? But I'm not going to eat at McDonald's because that's horrible for your health. So that's kind of like my thought on that. Does that kind of answer the question, or did I?
Yeah, no, it does. I'm just wondering though, as far as like you said, from a psychological point of view, it would be difficult for a guy. But what if you're a guy who didn't have access to women? Let's say you were disabled or had some kind of issue. Wouldn't that be potentially positive in his life to have some kind of, even if it ended up being transactional?
Yeah, I think for certain guys it could be. And I think in parts of Europe, like Netherlands, they actually have they're called sex counselors. So they combine therapy with sex. So basically, it's a really good way to get guys into therapy. But basically, you're you talk about your sexual intimacy issues, 45 minutes, then you have sex, right? So that's in other countries, that's actually a form of therapy. So yeah, I think for certain guys, it could be beneficial. I just would say that it's a small percentage of guys. Guys who have a really bad disability or have some kind of condition. Sure, okay, I get that. But I think for the average guy, doing it here and there is one thing, but engaging in it regularly, because you're not gonna if you can get something really easy, let's say it costs $50 because you live in I don't know, Mexico or something like that. Why would you develop your game if it's so easy for you to get it? You might be, tempted not to, right? So I do think that's something that needs to be engaged in moderation. But yeah, I could see it being beneficial for a small percentage of men.
Okay. But it seems like, that, and I'm not debating, I'm just interested in your opinion, but it's something that, the development of game is, it takes a lot of hard work and, and if your outcome is going to be the same, that all you're doing is looking for a hookup and, it's $50, why not just spend the $50 and, don't have to worry about smooth talking a woman and, you get your needs met that way?
Yeah, two reasons. First of all, I don't think it's the same thing. I think I've only ever had sex with prostitutes twice in my life, right? One was when I was 19 and one when I was 22. And both times I found the girls were very attractive, but the experience significantly inferior to having sex with a girl who's even potentially less attractive. Because I don't know, for me, and this is Dan Bilzerian talks about this a lot too, you can just tell when a girl's into you or she's not into you. And there's just, I think, such a big difference in the experience you're going to have because sex is largely mental, even for men. It's largely mental. So, yeah, I just think there's going to be such a massive difference in the experience you're going to have, whether you're having sex with a prostitute or you're having sex with a girl who actually finds you attractive and actually is interested in having sex with you. So I would say that's the first thing. Mm-hmm. The second point I want to make was I think that the good things in life are things you have to kind of work on, because if it was easy, then everyone would do it. So think about fitness, having a business, right? All the getting good again, all those things are things you have to develop. But you could take the easy way and work at, why would you build your business and go through years and years of suffering, of not making money, of turmoil, when you could just get a regular office job, right? Why would you do it? Well, the reason people do it is because they're no, I'm willing to sacrifice short term and work really hard to get this long term benefit, right? I think it's the same thing with game. Be yeah, it's a pain in the ass, but I think that the guys who embark on it, it's sure, it's a pain in the ass, and sure, I could just get subpar sex from prostitutes, but I would rather develop that part of me so I could get that eventual ROI. So I view it similar to starting a business. It's pain in the ass short term, but long term, it's a good decision. I think pretty much anything in life that's admirable or worth having are things that you have to work on, and not things that are easy. Because if it was easy, everyone would have it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm wondering what your thoughts about like all this talk.
I was just thinking that like I have that mindset too, right? But I'm going to use that same mindset to argue the fact that I use it in order to be in a relationship, right? Like I'm not going to do the easy, casual hookup. I guess I consider that easy, right? Because, it would be on Tinder easily, tonight it would be so easy to message anyone and just
you could get an army of guys. Yeah.
But I don't want to because I know like, sure, that might be nice in the moment, but I know that it would have a mental impact, right? And I know that in many ways it would like devalue the experience. That would be my major concern, is that it almost would desensitize me, devalue it, so that when I am finding somebody that I really connect with later on, that's getting in the way. And I'm not able to get that connection during a sexual experience with them. Because I guess I'm going back to kind of that pair bonding. Mm-hmm. And I'm a believer in that. Like, I don't think that it's just a correlation. And the reason for that is because, like, think about anyone that at a young age, their first relationship, what follows their first relationship? Their first heartbreak. So, like, there's an emotional piece on both ends, I believe. And so it doesn't just start off as, like, I'm just, interested in the physical aspect of a relationship.
Yeah, before I respond to that, because I have a pretty thought out response, let me ask you one question. Do you feel like your value as a woman or as a potential partner goes down if you have casual sex with her? Like, do you feel like your value will go down if you engage in active sex with a random guy?
Honestly, I don't think I think that way now.
Okay.
I might think that I might see and look at other women and think that. But I don't think that of myself because I know myself. Like I do think that it depends, like I don't want to categorize women completely, but like if they're completely unhinged and they're like emotionally detached, like I just don't think that's possible. And I feel like something has caused that and they're not staying true to themselves and they're coping with something.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. But the reason I'm asking that question is because there is a significant percentage of men and women who think that every time a woman engages in a sexual act, her value as a partner goes down because they really they're obsessed with the idea of purity, right? So I was just curious to see where you stand on that. And in terms of like the response I have, I think, I don't think casual sex is for everyone. I think the big part is knowing yourself. So if you genuinely know yourself and you know that if you have casual sex with a guy, you will not be satisfied because you will not be able to get that connection from casual sex. I think there's like absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, I think it makes sense for you to, wait, right? Like that's it's just who you are and what kind of makes you tick. The only thing I would say is potentially worrisome is if you're using sex as a tool to get a guy in a relationship. I think that's are you doing that or
no?
No. Okay. So as long as you're not doing that, I think there's absolutely I don't have a disagreement with what you're doing. I think like that, like for someone like yourself who can only have a connection with someone they've known for a while, it makes sense. And especially if you don't want sex without connection, it makes sense for you to do that. I think some girls do get into trouble because they do use sex as a bargaining tool, which I think a woman should never do. And I think a man, if you ever catch a girl doing that, you should walk away. Kind of what we were saying earlier, weaponizing sex. But assuming that's not the case, then I think that's totally fine.
One of the thoughts I just had too, coming from the male perspective, is that if you met somebody that did have a lot of partners, but she ended up choosing you, from a guy's perspective, that could potentially feel really good.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because if she's like been with, I don't know, 50 dudes or something, and she says, I've been with 50 dudes, but like I really just want to be with you.
You're the best.
You're the best of everybody. I could see that, potentially having a really good self-esteem boost for the guy.
It's a catch-22 because yes, that can work that way. But also, why did she have sex with 100 guys? I think that's the question. Most of the time, women have, when they have like super high lay count, like we're talking like triple digits, Like, we're not talking like 5 or 10 or 15. We're talking like 100, 200, right? Like an extremely abnormal sex count, unless she's like works as a porn star. We're taking that out of the picture. Typically, it's because she's seeking validation through sex. If a girl's a nymphomaniac, typically like girls who have really high sex drives, their strategy is to get like 3 or 4 fuck buddies or 2 or 3 fuck buddies and have sex with them and maybe occasionally have sex with a new guy. But I've dated and met a lot of nymphomaniacs, and typically even them, they don't have a super high lay count, right? Again, because their strategy is just more of like, there's also women are much more concerned about like, like most of the time when a woman has sex, it's not that good because most guys suck in bed, blah, blah, blah. Also the safety issue. So again, typically a girl who has a really high sex drive, their strategy will be to get like a few fuck buddies that they like and mainly stick to that. So yeah, if I met a girl who has triple digit lay count, and I have met quite a few of those, I would ask why. And quite often it's validation seeking, or the girl is really, really, really driven by novelty, much more than the average person. But either one of those are not traits I would want in a long-term partner. If the girl is really driven by novelty, then chances are, at some point she's going to, get bored of the usual in your relationship. If she's validation seeking, typically she's going to go and try to seek that validation further. So yeah, I mean, like if I met a girl who had a high lay count and she was like, hey, when I was in my like 20s, or I had daddy issues, whatever, my daddy abandoned me. I went to therapy, I no longer feel that way. And I truly felt that like she's addressed whatever was the cause of that made her have a lot of casual sex. Then, I could potentially foresee myself, dating her. But most of the time, that's not the case. So yeah, I don't think a woman should be shamed for having lots of sex. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But as a guy, I would be very careful with a girl who has an abnormally high lay count, not because of the act of her having a lot of sex, but because what that potentially suggests about her personality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Sense.
I think that's almost what I was speaking to when I'm saying, a woman that is having a lot of partners and a lot of casual sex. To me, I feel like she's not being true to herself and something is missing, and that's because she is needing to seek that validation. And it just is telling, I think, that she hasn't worked on herself, emotionally or mentally enough to address an underlying cause as to what's making her feel like she needs to do that. Well, and I'm sure you've seen that, Todd, in your experience.
Sure. Well, I think there's also been a shift in culture where, because of feminism and female empowerment, it's something where a lot of women are dating like men typically would. And it's something that I think it's kind of a grand delusion. I don't think it's really healthy. But meaning that it's large scale, that, a lot of women are saying, that this is okay. But I think one of the biggest issues would be the safety issue, because again, if you're hooking up with some stranger, there's some bad apples out there, and, that's where assaults can come in and, things of that nature.
So that makes sense with what Alex is saying. Typically, it's more
that's why
like
it's not a typical
people.
Female strategy, even if a girl with a high sex drive. Yeah, I have never once met a girl who had a triple-digit lay count who did not have stories of sexual assault. Unfortunately, that's just the reality. I think for like the average girl, like let's take a girl who has like a normally high sex drive, right? Like she just loves sex. She wants it every minute. There's a lot of those girls out there. Even for that girl, she's still going to be concerned about her safety. She's still going to be, probably, concerned about having a bad experience or bad sex. So even that girl, she'll probably just get a few fuck buddies. So when you get a girl typically who has that triple digit lay count, there's that external factor like validation seeking, or she's just wired to really crave novelty, which is something that's more common in men, but that happens with some women as well. So yeah, that would be like something. Yeah. I think this is the part a lot of people get confused. I think that it's not the actual act of the girl having sex with hundreds of guys that makes her worse of a partner. Like, I think just having a lot of sex doesn't make you a better or worse partner. Potentially makes you even better because you have a lot more experience. It's the why, and that why is typically not something positive.
Right. So, and I think that plays into why I think there's a lot of men out there that would not be okay with a woman having, like multiple options, casually, that if he's getting involved with her, he wants to be the only one.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be a part of her roster.
Right. No rosters, right? Like that is feedback that I get all the time from my following, is that they are not interested in a woman that has a roster. So what do you think is going on in that kind of man's mindset?
They may not be. Well, I think that's actually a pretty normal mindset to have as a man. It's like, yeah, like I don't want to be one of many. I want to be the only one. I think that though, even though a lot of men may object to it and not want it, they will do it because the sexual marketplace is so skewed in the West in a girl's favor that like, I think like for someone who doesn't work in my field, it's easy to forget how bad it is. Like when I go to family reunions, I talk to my cousins who are all like, have normal lives. They're like, Alex, I just don't understand. Like, why are so many guys struggling? I was like, some of these guys are so desperate. They literally will climb Mount Everest, fly across the world, do like 50 backflips, wait for 3 years just to get laid. Like it's the depravity and the insanity that men are driven to just to have sex is just it's on a new level now. But yeah, so I think that girl will have no problem, even if she's not that attractive, filling up her roster. I think some guys may not like it, but a lot of guys will put up with it.
Yeah, actually, we were discussing that prior, not that specific issue, but what was the thing we were speaking about?
Well, we were saying how men might just deal with a lot of situations because they just don't have any other options from a woman. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's something that it's fairly new because of the shift in the dating market.
Do you think one strategy for that type of man would be to get her into a relationship and cut out the other guys?
I think I would not try to like lock a girl down artificially for like that kind of ulterior motive. I think you should get in a relationship because you genuinely like love and care about that person. You want to spend time with them. I think any other reason is an incorrect reason to get in a relationship. So no, I probably would not recommend that. I would say that's like a bad move on the guy's part.
I'm going to just pivot a little bit because I'm interested in your opinion on this, and I'm also interested in Emily's. But how do you feel about relationships that are like obviously mismatched? Like the Trumps, for example. Those
a really attractive girl,
like with an old dude, who's got money or something. What's your kind of thoughts on that? Do you think there's real attraction from, like, do you really think that Donald Trump's wife is attracted to him?
No, I don't think Melania is attracted to Donald, but I think she's just thinking like a few moves ahead. She's like, this guy's probably going to die soon. I get like billions of dollars. Little does she know that Donald just lives forever. So he's probably going to like outlive her, if anything. He like has the worst diet ever. He's like the most unhealthy person ever. And he has like no health issues. But so I think she might have miscalculated. I think it's sad in some ways, on both parties. But then again, like there's the counterpoint. If you're a guy who's like 70, right? Like you're loaded as fuck, but you're not good looking anymore. You're like, your dick barely works. Like, like what's your other alternative, right? Like you can either have sex with a grandma, right? Which probably Donald Trump doesn't want to do. You can pay for prostitutes, or you can just be like, yeah, whatever. Like this girl's into me for my money. Fuck it. So I think that, like, who am I to judge that 70-year-old when I'm like in my 30s? And would I do that when I'm in my 70s? Like, who the fuck knows? It's possible. So I think that's like the flip side of the coin. But yeah, I do think it's like kind of sad. But like I don't judge those people.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's possible for people like that to actually have a healthy relationship?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. No, I think that they're in those situations. There's always like cheating involved, and like it's more of like a business transaction at that point. It's like, hey, you're not gonna like shame me in public. I'm not gonna shame you in public. Yeah. So I don't think. I mean, it just depends on how you define like workout. If you mean like genuine, like in the traditional way where there's like a genuine love and affection, then no. If you mean like both parties have their needs met and are maybe happier than they would have been separately, then yeah, I do think that's possible. But a genuine like love, no.
Oh, okay. I remember I was listening to one of your podcasts or episodes, and you were saying that you see that all the time in Miami, where there's the old guy with the young hot woman, and
super common here. Yeah, it's insane. People who come visit me in Miami like always observe on that. They're like, holy shit. They're like, I never realized how many sugar daddies and sugar babies there are. Yeah, you just walk around like where I live, and it's just like everywhere. You see these like old geezers with these like smoke show like milks. Yeah. It'll blow your mind.
Uh-huh. And so do people generally accept it down there, or is it, judged as well?
I think it's fairly. I mean, there's different social circles that I'm not involved in, but from what I see, I feel like it's fairly socially accepted here. It's like super common. So yeah, I would say it's fairly socially accepted here. More often.
Well, it's probably because it's a big city and it's probably more liberal in a lot of ways than, if it was the Midwest, for example.
But I think that like taking a city like, yeah. I mean, maybe the liberal part. I wouldn't say Miami's like kind of neutral. It's not liberal. It's not conservative. I think it more has to do with like the Miami mindset. Everyone's like flashy. Like in Miami, like for example, this is like pretty sad, but there's like a humongous luxury car rental business. And basically, the documentary I watched on that is there's a lot of people who blow their whole paycheck on renting like a Lamborghini for 2 days, right? They work for a whole month. They could barely feed themselves and their family, and they will rent a Lamborghini just to feel like a big shot for 2 days. Super common here. So I think that has to do with that kind of like flashy, like, keeping up with the Jones type of mindset that you see in Miami that is like less predominant in like other cities.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Interesting. Yeah. No, it was just something that because you live there and you had spoken about that, I just thought it would be interesting to kind of talk about a little bit because we're talking about atypical relationships.
Yeah. And I would say like, I don't know, those women might say out loud that they're attracted, to their man. But I do think to some degree women's attraction is complex, that actually status and money does get tied into 100 other things. So it just depends on it depends on the woman, to be honest. If they rate that as a high priority in the man that they're looking for, then that's how those situations end up.
Yeah, because I think we have to. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I don't know if you read, but Robert Kraft just got married. He's the owner of the Patriots, and he's like 81, and he married like a 45-year-old who's but she's a doctor.
Smart too, then, and makes her own money, but not as much as him.
No, he's a billionaire. But it's it's still kind of what the manosphere would call beta buxing.
Yeah.
Right. Essentially. Yeah. Even though, but it's just kind of odd because again, she's not super young. And she's a professional.
Well, that's where maybe he values intelligent conversations a bit more, than looks.
But there's definitely, like, if you Google it, there's a huge looks disparity.
Oh, wow.
See,
she might value that intelligence on top of the success and money.
Yeah, because I'm obviously.
But I think we have to differentiate between a guy who's just very like successful businessman, right? And the girl admires that versus a guy who's actually giving a girl money, whether that's directly or indirectly by like taking her on shopping sprees, right? Although that's fairly direct, right? I think it is totally possible for a younger woman to be genuinely attracted to a really successful businessman who's older, right? She's not focusing on the looks, she's focusing on external success. But I do not believe it is possible for women to be genuinely attracted to a sugar daddy, a guy who's actually giving her money. I think, and I've had these podcasts on my channel, and like a lot of girls in Miami are like sugar babies, right? So I'll ask them like, are you actually attracted to your sugar daddy? And they'll always be like, yeah, of course I am. Kind of what you were saying, like they pretend like they are. I can just sense that their attraction is not there just by the way they speak about the guy. Like they see him more of like a like an object or something like that rather than like a partner. So yeah, I don't think there's those relationships like where you're actually giving money to the girl. I don't think there's genuine attraction there. I think they're very fragile because the minute the girl meets a guy who can give her more money, well, she's going to go with him, right? Like, why would she stay with you? Like the main draw is the money. So why not go with the guy who has more money? So yeah, like,
or if the guy's money dries up, then she's gone. Right.
Yeah. That happens all the time too. Yeah. So I find that shit like really sad. But again, if I was 80 years old, I could only get laid by spending money. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
I think that totally makes sense. I mean, I've seen sugar babies talk about their man that gives them money, like in a bad way. Like, oh, he paid for this, and like kind of goes after the fact that he had to belittle himself essentially to get her attention by buying her something.
Yeah. I think people are complex though. And so it's one of those things where I think that in rare cases, there's a lot of these women have emotional needs as well. And so it's one of those things where, they may end up getting some form of connection, again, because this is where we would go against wheat waffles, is that I think there's people that bring a lot more to the table than just looks, and that can be attractive to a woman.
Yes.
And so I agree with Alex that if it's just like, it's essentially prostitution if you're just paying somebody off.
Yeah, it's like a legal long-term form of prostitution. Exactly.
Yeah. But I guess if you're having more providing a lifestyle for that person, then I think, again, I think there's probably exceptions to that rule because I think a woman has needs as well. And sometimes, if the guy was really bright and let's say she's not, that's something that could be really appealing to her.
I think there's exceptions for every rule. So could I envision a scenario where a young sugar baby legitimately falls in love with like a guy who's giving her money? Sure, that can happen. I'm sure it's happened, right? There's exceptions for every rule. But if we're speaking generalities, kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about respect. And I think there's something about you having to use money as a leverage in order to keep a girl around that makes her lose respect for you. And again, once that respect goes down, it's just kind of like when I talk to these sugar babies, I can just sense that they say they like their sugar daddy, but they don't really respect him that much. They just really don't. And often I also see like an uglier side of this because like I'll hook, like, when I have casual sex, a lot of these chicks are sugar babies for, they have like a rich sugar daddy and they'll be like, wait, babe, please don't leave a mark on my ass because he's going to see that. Right. Like it's stuff like that. So like quite often I'm like, wait, he doesn't know you're doing this? They're like, no. He's like super old and like whatever traditional. So quite often I think like that, in fact, the majority of the time, these sugar babies are fucking around. They're sleeping, right? Like these old dudes aren't like fucking them well, so they're not getting their sexual needs met. So, yeah, I just think it's mainly a facade. But some people gotta do what they gotta do.
Yeah.
That makes me think of, like if you're a man in an open relationship, or let's just say you think that you don't want a relationship and you just want to keep it casual, when you're young. What does that look like in the future? Like, do you think that these are the men that are ending up with sugar babies,
I would think it almost be have to, because you're going to age out of the, unless you're going to like be 70 and hitting on other 70-year-olds, which happens because I know a guy that
STDs are like most predominant in old folks' homes. So yeah, those old people, they're good. Do you guys see those studies?
Yeah, there's a place in Florida. What's it called?
Yeah.
It's not too far from you.
Yeah.
It's all a retirement community, and
they're all just passing each other like fucking STDs from the 1800s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. I haven't seen any studies on this, but I could logically foresee that there being a correlation there. But I think it's far from an absolute. Like I don't know where I'm gonna be at when I'm gonna be 80, but I don't foresee myself doing that. Like, I don't know. Like for me, it's like having genuine attraction from the girl and respect is like crucial. So I would foresee myself. I have to like pick like, okay, what's Alex's future going to be? I think it's more likely that I'm going to get like, settled down, maybe not get married, but be in like a long-term relationship, maybe even potentially with a girl I'm seeing now, right? Like we've been together for a while. We really like each other. Like who knows? But yeah, I think, I don't think it has to be that way, but yeah, could there be a correlation there? Yeah, potentially.
For guys that are kind of trying to figure it out, say they're in their 20s, do you think that it's good for them to kind of figure out if they want a relationship in the future and kind of set goals towards that? Or do you think it's just kind of better for them to learn about themselves and just decide later on?
I would say those two things are not mutually exclusive. You could do both. I mean, I think you should know yourself. Like I have a friend, one of my closest friends, and he has no problem getting girls. So he's not doing it from scarcity, but he's always been a relationship guy. Like me and him have had discussions. He's like, Alex, I legitimately prefer being in a relationship than to having casual sex. And this is a guy who can have a lot of casual sex if he wants to, and he has had some, but he made the conscious decision knowing himself that he's happier, being in a relationship, right? And, good on him, right? I think there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, I do think you should know yourself. But the point I was making earlier is I just don't think you should, I don't know, like kind of rush into things. or close down your options too early out of life. And I think the worst thing you can do is pick from a place of scarcity, meaning like, oh, I can't really get girls. I'm having a hard time. This girl's not that bad. She's willing to fuck me. She's pretty nice. Yeah, I'll just date her. That usually doesn't happen consciously. Like a guy's not actually saying that, but subconsciously that's happening all the time. And I think that's a really bad place to come from. And I almost always see those relationships destined for failure.
Yeah, I do think that happens quite often with men that are young and they're in a long-term relationship and they kind of just go into their next phase, like they're pushed to, hand her the ring and get engaged. He's pushed to kind of go into that marriage, and it's just like that next step that he feels like he needs to drop into. And I think that does probably come from the mindset of scarcity, because I've even seen men talk about this that are married that say, if she became single, hence my wife, she'd have so many options. I don't want her to leave me, because if I am single, I'll have no options. Look at me.
Yeah, that's the thing I was going to add, is that
I think that's a really bad place to be in mentally as a man.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I was going to add is that I think that there's a lot of young men out there that are legitimately living in scarcity because of the fact that they just don't have options. Yeah. And I think that's what's causing, a lot of the problems.
Because it's easy to say, just change your mindset.
Yeah.
But if they have literally lived it for years, what is the answer for them?
Yeah, well, I used to be one of them. I think the first, what is not the answer? Not the answer is picking your girlfriend and getting into a serious relationship from a place of scarcity, because this girl's willing to fuck you. Well, all she requires is that you date her, and other than that, she'll have sex with you. That is something you should not do. I think that what you should do is something that's a lot harder, but a lot more rewarding later on. Is you should be able work to get into a place of abundance. And that's like things like, working on your fitness, learning game, learning charisma, getting involved in various social circles, all the stuff I talk about on my channel. So first, you should get into that place of abundance. Once you're in that place of abundance, then you can decide, realistically, whether you are interested in a relationship for real, or you just want to have a lot of sex, right? But I think you cannot make that decision until you're in that place of abundance. I think that's what you should do first as a man. I think that if you get into a relationship out of scarcity, that's just like destined for failure the vast majority of the time.
A lot of the discussions we've had today are kind of questions that I had, and, and informing Emily about your channel. We really thank you for coming on and being so honest and open about, your life and your some of your philosophies. I think that they're super interesting. And, our channel is really kind of designed to talk about a lot of different issues and a lot of different perspectives. And you definitely gave us some things to think about. And we really appreciate that.
Yeah, it was a really interesting discussion. Most of the time when I do interviews, it's always like, okay, Alex, talk about text game, talk about photos. So it's fun for me to actually talk about other things that I haven't discussed like 1,000 times. So yeah, I thought it was a really good discussion. I'm looking forward to when you guys drop this. But yeah, it was a really fun discussion. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great that we can come together with all different perspectives and really have a mature conversation. And thank you for being open too.
Yeah.
About your personal
for sure.
stuff.
No worries.
Thanks for being on, Alex.
Okay.